Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of Beyond Teaching, a series featured on the Psych Sessions Network. This series is hosted by Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University, Adiyinka Akinseler-Smith from City College of New York, City University of New York, Asani Sewell from Pacific University, and yours truly, Eric Landrum from Boise State University. To be a successful psychology academic or professional, it takes more than teaching research or clinical skills. That is, today's professionals were probably not taught everything they need to know in graduate school. The Psych Sessions podcast, Beyond Teaching, strives to fill that gap. We chat about the topics we need to know about to be successful in our careers, but we didn't know to ask about in graduate school. When we don't have the expertise among us, we go out and find someone. And this is particularly relevant in Season 3. These 10 episodes were recorded from June 7th through November 2nd, 2021, and they are being released starting December 29th, 2021, and Season 3 will finish on March 30th, 2022. What are you in for? Oh, the places we'll go. We'll chat about leveraging social media, publications, and playing that classic academic game, how to make decisions about co-authoring, dealing with student requests for accommodations and exceptions, which seems especially relevant in this era, and maximizing student office hours, or what are called student hours these days. Also in Season 3, we invited a number of guests to come on the podcast and share their expertise with us. This included Sunyoung Lee and Psychi's Faculty Support Advisory Committee and what Psychi can do for faculty, Loretta McGregor and the difference between mentoring and advising, with extra information about imposter phenomenon tossed in for good measure. Sandy Jenkins and James Lane share their experience from 2 accumulated careers about clinical supervision, and Beatrice Krause shares her delightful adventures in retirement, which depart greatly from our retirement stereotypes or typical tropes. We truly hope that you'll enjoy Season 3 of Beyond Teaching.
Here's food for thought.
Okay.
I've had the experience of being on dissertation committees that are in other countries. And that's been a real eye-opener for me. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're talking about travel. And I'm on one at the University of Amsterdam, where that is structured completely differently, where the expectation is that the person, by the end of their journey, has 5 peer-reviewed papers. So they're not manuscripts, they're actual peer-reviewed publications. And so each section, the introduction, the methods, the result, is based on one of those papers. And why I'm just thinking is we've been talking, usually what happens is everyone is supposed to be there. So I was invited because this is somebody who I know who is from there, but did a lot of work in Sierra Leone. And I'm familiar with her work. And so I'm like the, third, fourth, whatever reader. But part of the deal is that they bring you out there for the defense. But it's also, I remember when I first looked at it, it was a little confusing to me, but it's also such a different way of the way we do it here, where the student then graduates and has in hand 5 peer-reviewed publications.
So I was going to say, I think we should have this be a jumping off point for our topic. And I think that we should include Yinka's preamble, but we're looping you in a little late that this is another session of Beyond Teaching. Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University.
Yinka Akinseler-Smith from the City College of New York.
And Eric Landrum from Boise State University. So Yinka, so rather than have 5 chapters in an overly long dissertation, they have to have the students at this university in Amsterdam have to have 5 peer-reviewed scholarly publications in press or in print?
In print.
So
In print.
I have a lot of thoughts about this, actually. I don't know if it's still true, but our PhD in chemistry at Seton Hall used to require a peer-reviewed publication to graduate, not just the dissertation, but it had to be published.
Mhm.
I also have a former master's student at Seton Hall who's now in a doctoral program, and she either needs to write another master's thesis there, or if she can get her previous master's thesis published, then she could skip the master's thesis there. So I actually recently went through the process with her over the last year or so. We did get it published. We went through a few iterations, but it made me sort of think. In her case, it worked out, but there's pressure there to publish perhaps in journals that aren't as good, to publish something that might not meet all of the standards right in this era of open science. Are they cutting corners? Are they p-hacking or harking? The Netherlands actually, I think, is at the avant-garde of open science in psychology. So I feel really pretty good about most universities there. But it really worries me that this is already the pressure that we face as professors trying to get tenure. Here are PhD students who might not even be going an academic route, also trying to get these scarce spots in journals. And I think it's pushing the edges of what's good research that's out there. And for any individual student, I think many of them are excellent and wonderful contributions to the literature, but it really worries me.
I was thrown because I've never seen that way of going through. And in her defense, I mean, her work, I read it all and her work was really good. But now that you're saying this, Susan, I can see how, in my email to her as after I read it and commenting and thinking about what she'd done and what it meant. And she was saying just, phew, glad it's over. It's been a challenge, but I had never thought of that kind of approach to getting that degree.
And
go ahead, Eric.
No, there's such gamesmanship, as we all know, in journal publishing. And so does the committee count co-authorships, or does it have to be 5 single-authored papers?
Single-authored paper. I think she may have had, some of them may have been co-authored, but she had to be the lead author.
Yeah. And so now you start doing things with your co-authors. Did you do first author type work, or do you start begging or pleading with your co-authors?
Or horse trading. If you put me first on this one, then once I get my PhD, I'll put you first.
And to Susan's point about quality, I think there's ways. Do you start saying, does the dissertation committee say you can only submit to these journals with this impact factor? And then, so there's ways to do quality control, but then in that way, you're almost making it more gamified by playing these games. And I think you're probably also impeding, you're making it, you're not helping a diversified audience get access to quality dissertations and promotions and access to the academic world when you gamify and raise these standards. I think there's some pretty good evidence in the literature about this.
I would also argue that some kinds of research are more publishable than other types of research. And so particularly research that's being done centering on perhaps marginalized communities, or just more obscure questions that perhaps shouldn't be obscure, or bigger problems. I mean, what if a project that might take 5 years to do that results in one paper? Are people not doing that kind of work? So I think it really starts channeling towards the, just do this basic series of experiments on memory that is very appropriate for X journal. And I think it really limits the kind of research that's being done.
I could see someone gamifying. I've got a 5 experiment paper that would really make a nice contribution in JEP, learning, memory, and cognition, or I could slice it up into 3 and try to milk it for 3 in memory and cog and these different places. And then I just need 2 more, because I got to gamify this system to get my dissertation. And we already gamify it in some departments to get promotion with tenure, right? We we do have journal impact factors, and we do have these things. We do have these standards that we set that are somewhat gamified, and that works against people sometimes who do qualitative research or
Oh,
who
absolutely.
do technical
Absolutely.
reports, who working for granting agencies where it might not be publishable work for proprietary factors, not for the rigor of the research, but maybe United Way or Head Start doesn't want that data published because they're using it for internal improvements. So it's complicated.
There are other potential models that I can imagine working. One of the nice things about some of the preprint sites like PsychArchive is you can get your work out there in a context where people can comment on it. So what if instead of having to have it be published, you have to put it out there and see what kind of peer feedback you're getting, and maybe use Twitter to draw attention to the fact that it's there. And that could be some measure. So without having that publication part of it. And then you have to address the critiques that come in on your preprint. There must be other creative ways to have students get their work out there without requiring that it be in a peer-reviewed journal.
And I think the example Yinka is speaking to is in some ways a creative way. It doesn't have to be the standard dissertation that we've been doing for 200 years or longer in other disciplines. So that's kind of creative. I would like our discipline to start thinking about other non-traditional impacts and how it might contribute to a dissertation or promotion and tenure. And I've actually played with this a little bit in some research, which is way overdue and being written up. And so, but let me give you a practical example.
Please.
Maybe someone like Jess Hartnett, who already has promotion and tenure at Gannon University. But Jess Hartnett has a really popular blog called Not Awful and Boring Examples in Statistics. I might not have gotten that one exactly right. But and I've interviewed her for the Psych Sessions, the main podcast, the long form version. And when she went up for promotion and tenure, she included some testimonials and some data about the number of blog readers that she has, the number of downloads that she has for her blog. And I believe the number of lifetime downloads at the time she applied for promotion and tenure was over 400,000. And so
I listened to your interview with Jess, and I was really impressed with the reach. I love her blog.
I got it this morning in my email inbox. Yeah,
it's great. And I was impressed with the reach, but I was also really impressed how she, quote unquote, sold it as part of her promotion. And I think these other ways of having an impact are indeed really important ones, whether or not you are a public intellectual voice on Twitter, or you're writing op-eds, or you're writing for more mainstream outlets. These are the kinds of things that don't get the same accolades that peer-reviewed journal articles do, but have such a far reach in comparison. So I would love to see more of that being explicitly counted toward tenure and promotion and hiring. And
I mean, Yinka, as a clinician, how does your clinical work and expertise get counted, if you will, for or toward your promotion and tenure at the university?
I actually, in my package for both associate and full, had a section where I talked about that, because for me, the clinical informed the research, which informed the teach. So I was able to kind of convey that. But then when we think about this whole notion of being far reaching, and I think about the communities that I've worked in, for many of them, they're not going to go look at these peer review. They're not going to go looking for these peer reviewed. The talk is, and yeah, I write it. It's all dry and blah, it's up here. So for me, part of with some of the papers is going back into the community and doing a presentation with them and getting their feedback. So this is what we did. This is what we found. What do you think about this? Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Or your experience is different? Because often it's like you come and you collect this research and you go away and they're like, okay, that was nice, or that was not so nice, or thank you for nothing. And just being able to inform them about what we're doing and why it's important, I think that is what is going to make them more likely to engage.
But Yinka, for your, and if we don't want to go here, you just wave me off. But for your, let's say for your application for promotion to full, that committee, I'm assuming they looked at your publications and your scholarly work, but did they examine or appreciate your community engagement and your clinical work? I mean, you just said it eloquently. It informed one another, and the scholarly work was dry. I doubt if it's as dry as you think it is. But do you know what I'm saying? Do they get the importance of you have 2 feet in 2 worlds, or do they only care about what you gave them in terms of the bean counting of scholarly presentations and scholarly publications?
I think I was able to make the argument that they were important enough. And also, I also draw on a lot of that for my teaching, so examples that are kind of not necessarily textbook examples for my students, and in my students in their evaluations, they spoke to some of that. So that kind of it helped it kind of come together, come alive for them. So it was seen as something valuable. But again, often it's not. It's community service is one side, and it's all about how many publications, where did you publish?
Right.
What is the impact factor? Now it's what is your H factor? And we can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Conundrums that I've run into is that we lobby, and we are sometimes very successful in being called a STEM science on my campus. But my STEM colleagues are often very numerically, quantitatively centered. So they want that H factor. They think in terms of how many grant dollars has your department brought in.
Yes.
Grant dollars. SCH is the metric, student credit hours.
Mm-hmm.
So some, but not all of my colleagues are very metric driven with easy to measure metrics. But community impact is not an easy to measure impact. It takes work and qualitative reporting and time to develop those relationships. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, but I'm just for our listeners, sometimes the most important work may be the most difficult to quantify or to measure. And sometimes we have to do a better job as psychological scientists in showing what's important.
I also want to point out that some of the things you're talking about, Eric, can be gamified as well.
Yes,
and,
indeed.
Multiple papers are looking, what is the one that will get me to the, next level of, getting cited, for example, as part of the H factor. And self-citations, I never really understood that. I've never played that game because it never really crossed my mind. As a reviewer of journals, I see sometimes I can guess who the person is who wrote it because there's so many citations of the same person. That's all being gamified. And I think that's also problematic because we're rewarding something that might not be representative of the actual work. And I also want to throw textbooks into the mix. I write textbooks, Eric, you do as well. And these have a much wider readership than anything I've ever published. Even my most read, most cited journal article pales in comparison. And yet that doesn't count to the same degree. I mean, nearly, not even close to what peer-reviewed journal.
But I would make the argument that it should, because that scholarship of
I agree.
That intro psych textbook that Susan, that you've written and collaborated on, has brought together, 2,000 citations into 700 pages in an eloquent manner and reached hundreds of thousands over time, if not millions of readers.
What I would argue too, the book that you've written for the undergraduate psychology major on careers, I often hear people talking about that and the impact that has had on students' lives, very direct. I agree that these other types of scholarly work, because I do consider them scholarly, should also be counted.
And the tweets and retweets by Anna Robb and Bob Dubois and our colleagues who are on Instagram and on Facebook distributing information to students and colleagues. These are also scholarly endeavors that really help faculty and students that are not easily quantifiable. And to be fair, here are 3 full professors enjoying the fruits of our labor on an August day. Everybody has to play the game. So wherever you're at, if you're an academic or if you're not an academic, to get promotions, to be successful in the workplace, you have to play the game that you're handed, but just realize it is a game. And when you get into places where you might have some power or leadership, try to help others survive the game. And if you have the power to change the game, try to change the game.
Absolutely. And just getting back to Yinka's initial story about this requirement for the 5 peer-reviewed journal articles, I think it was a great launching off point to talk about the fact that we can change these goalposts. And I maybe disagree that should be the goalpost, but we can change them from the dissertation that disappears into obscurity to something that has more of an impact in various ways.
So Yinka, are you going to go to Amsterdam?
So this is a thing. Initially, it had been, and then a week ago, I got an email from them saying now with everything has changed, everybody's required to be there. So I emailed the chair of the committee to say, I'm not thinking Delta, saying, I am double vaxxed and I would be happy to, what arrangements would be made? And she's like, oh, I'm so excited. But now I'm thinking, ooh, did I speak too soon? Do I really want to get on a plane and go anywhere? So I don't know.
They can book a refundable ticket and they can make a reservation that's cancelable at a very nice 4-star hotel. I mean,
the planes to Europe are much safer than within the US because everyone is required to be vaccinated to get on the plane to go over there. And right now we're not accepting Europeans back here. So everyone on your return flight is double vaxxed because they have to have been in Europe, and you're required to get a negative test before you board your flight on the way home. Yeah. So the flight is less of a concern than other, like the airport in the US, where lots of people in that airport are probably not vaxxed. That would be more work.
I have till the end of October to make my final decision. So I will keep you posted.
Maybe on another episode.
We'll be doing an episode from me reporting from Amsterdam. Who knows? We'll see.
Maybe we'll have a whole episode dedicated to travel, because Susan and I may talk you into the benefits of club travel within airports and how safety could become a factor in addition to comfort.
I have colleagues who swear by that. Yes.
If you're traveling as much as I might imagine you are, the United Club is a delightful investment, and I consider it tax deductible year over year.
Okay. Something to look forward to.
What a fun conversation this was, and the travel conversation will be.
Looking forward. Thank you both.
Thank you. And Asani, we miss you. We'll have you back as soon as you're ready.